So it's recorded now. Right, let's do some talking, a little bit of thinking about what's transpired today in the news, which is mainly in regards to everyone can be sold. That's headline one, which is something, ironically, the majority of the so-called reactionary fan base have been saying for years, right? Sell everyone, get rid of everyone. And then now it seems like Ineos are kind of in that boat, right? So we're going to talk about that. Talk about this fire sale. Everybody going. Everybody leaving. Oh, shit. And then what else are we going to talk about? And then we're going to talk about Ten Hag. And realistically, a lot of hella. Is that even allowed to say? Hella noise? Such a horrible word. I'd never even say that in real life, so I don't even know why I'm saying it now. But yeah, we'll talk about that as well. Talk about the Dutch media basically saying that he is top of this shortlist, and he's staying on that shortlist, and he's got till June the 1st or whatever for that to be something that's decided. But yeah, let's get into Ten Hag first. So yeah, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of noise in regards to him being on this shortlist, being part of the new plans to kind of rebuild again. He already rebuilt Ajax's team twice, and it makes a lot of sense for him to go back. It really does. I think that one of the biggest things that Ten Hag has proven that he's deficient in is his charisma and kind of character traits and personality traits. Being Manchester United manager, it's massively like part politician, part spokesperson, communicator, and kind of culture setter, right? And I feel like in regards to the kind of like charisma side of being a manager of a prestige club, I think that's where he's fallen short the most. And I think that and all of the other elements have been a byproduct of his kind of lack of ability to kind of command the stage. And I think that's kind of his biggest issue, his inability to command the stage. And that's something that you generally just either have or you don't. You can't really train that up too much, especially when you've got the personality traits of Ten Hag, kind of cold, seems kind of like hurt. He gets kind of hurt quite easily. Seems that he gets quite angry. But the biggest thing, it seems like he's kind of that ego that he has within him, which isn't always a bad thing to have, seems to really get damaged quite easily. And I think this reputation of being this kind of like football genius or someone that's so meticulous and gets everything correct, once that starts getting questioned so heavily as it does at a prestige club like United, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, just about. Once it starts getting questioned, you see a man's personality traits and their flaws and how they handle these situations. And I feel like Ten Hag, basically, his charisma and his personality has basically let him down. And all the byproducts that have come from that, we can talk about till the cows come home. But he needs to go back to a smaller stage. This isn't ironically, like say even a Thomas Tuchel, right? Tuchel can have been seen to have failed quite heavily at a lot of his clubs in recent times, but because he has that kind of character, he has charisma. Like Tuchel is full of charisma. Whether you agree or find it annoying, or you find him slimy or like a bit diva-ish, he still has charisma, so he still commands that kind of highest stage in regards to the clubs that he will manage, right? But I think Ten Hag has been seen to be someone that is stiff, right, and doesn't necessarily have the personality to manage at the highest level, and that means manage the players at the highest level, manage the media at the highest level, manage probably like board expectations at highest level. But yeah, so I think that's why I think it makes a lot of sense for him to go back home, back to Ajax, back to basically the football university, right? Back to somewhere where you can be that teacher, because when you go to Ajax, you're back to football university. and everyone there is a student. So to harness kind of the attitude of the group is a lot easier because it's kind of like within the culture of the club. Even the first team players are still within this kind of like football fraternity, university kind of culture, right? Where big diva and ego doesn't seem to be something that's kind of like really accepted. So it is the perfect place for him to go back to. It makes total sense. And then you kind of question, well, how long ago would have this even been kind of like a genuine possibility? Because you'd imagine before Ineos came in, no matter kind of like how Ten Hag was doing, before Ineos were officially confirmed, you would not think that Ten Hag would have been on a shortlist for the Ajax job. No matter how bad he was doing, right? So then you keep working your way down the timeline, and you're like, well, when would this have been? So we come back after kind of the little break, the mini break, the mini winter break, and then from then on in, the scrutiny seems to have kind of like ramped up even more from the Newport game onwards, right? And I generally feel that there could definitely be some merit to this of being something that has been ongoing for a while. I think Ten Hag's not stupid. I think you can see that the writing's on the wall. I think that not just purely from performance, but just from the environmental reasons and the situation that he finds himself in, being kind of the old furniture that's already there when somebody's moved in, no matter how nice it is, renovations start happening, and then you start looking like the sore thumb that's just there from this old regime. So I feel like there could be some merit that this has been going on for a while. I feel like it's interesting how De Zerbi, which is definitely my preference, I think, from everyone that's available. So no one else is linked with De Zerbi. De Zerbi linked with nobody. And you could say, oh, well, look at the results and how things have been going this season. But I feel like it's interesting how the Liverpool job gets kind of sorted quickly with Arne Slot. Nagelsmann stays with Germany. Tuchel's obviously leaving, so that's in the air. But I feel like there could be easily potential where De Zerbi's been kind of like sounded out, and it's been kind of agreed to a certain extent. I feel like common sense says that they don't want Ten Hag in that position next year. Common sense also says that if you want somebody to play, firstly, so Ashworth has a big connection with De Zerbi. So again, common sense says that it makes sense. A lot of sense is there. Then you have Barada and Wilcox, both with heavy Manchester City pedigree and background. There is a solid, straight philosophy that Manchester City have that is completely taken from Barcelona, right? Like, what manager that's available is gonna stick and not budge from playing in a certain style that is Barcelona-esque, right? I know very loosely. But there's one manager, and it's De Zerbi. There's nobody else out there available that is so kind of like hardened into wanting to play his own specific style, which is very pleasing on the eye. It's courageous. Two things that are style of play and tactical kind of like philosophy so far removed from. And I feel like it makes complete sense. I feel like all the kind of common sense narratives are all kind of, if you add them all together, it equals Ten Hag probably going back there. It makes complete sense. Rebuild your reputation again, and then maybe go to Germany, to like a Dortmund job. One sec. My fucking wind, bro. What's going on with this wind? And like, I know he looks kind of like pretty despondent, like a lot of the time, in recent times as well. How can you not be with the performances that his team has been putting in, Ten Hag? But it feels like it's kind of like it feels like he's like removed himself emotionally from it. And then you can say, well, the amount of pelters that he's getting and the amount of kind of like Rashford wants to talk about abuse. Imagine the shit that Ten Hag's getting at the moment. So you can be like, right, he seems quite an introverted guy that's trying to kind of like, well, he's in a profession that he has to be a leader, right? So he has to try and eke out or try and like extract as much kind of like leadership from his introvert personality as possible. And yeah, I think that it is definitely possible that he has gone into his shell because of, one, it just pains him so much to see what's going on the pitch. Like maybe in his own delusion he thinks that like this is the only way it can be, and this hurts me so much watching it that it's killing me, and I'm getting so much pressure from the media and the fans that I've just kind of like gone within myself. And going within yourself also then comes with elements of like erratic anger that gets kind of like spouted out, and kind of like defensiveness. But the other element that can be that he's kind of checked out because literally like in all the senses of the word, he is checked out. Like, he's going, and if everything else is being kind of like done with this kind of like real cutthroat, not even cutthroat, but kind of like emotionless manner at the moment. And it is, if you think about it, like all these decisions that are being made are very quick, or as quick as possible. We're getting the best people in that we can. There's no room for emotion, and this is my next point I want to get onto. The fans stand on certain morals, right? So you're a fan of a club, and there's like these morals that you stand by. And I feel like a lot of times it's either you stand by kind of like the morals of the club, or some other people stand by kind of the morals of football as a sport in general and how they feel like it should be played. But I feel like fans, and let's say United fans at the moment with Ten Hag, they want to give him another year or whatever, right? Because they want to be fair. It's about fairness. They think another year to be fair to the guy. But whereas in realistically elite level performance and elite level analysis and evaluation, there isn't the fairness isn't involved in the conversation. It doesn't exist. It's about making the correct decision constantly, and about moving forward and progressing as a business, whether that's moving profits forward or whether that's performance based in whatever avenue. But in elite level sport here, and I think that United fans have like forgotten kind of what elite level kind of like decision making looks like, and how cutthroat it can seem, and how like unfamily like it can seem. Because that's the whole thing, isn't it? The rhetoric with the United and the fans, that kind of like we're above the modern day nature of hire and fire, and we've got the certain morals that we stand by. But I feel like Ineos aren't obliged to run with that narrative. They're not obliged to run with that narrative when it comes to hiring, firing, and that kind of nature. Whether all up and down the hierarchy, right? And they're not also obliged to kind of like go with the narrative of kind of like the United DNA in regards to the playing style. So we can finally maybe see that we're moving away from a hierarchy that don't give two shits about playing the United way, and just actually understand that modern, like if you want to play modern, good football that has a chance of like growing into something that can be a title challenge, then it has to be a lot more. It has to be a lot more not laid back, but it has to be a lot more methodical. There has to be a lot more thought involved in it, and these huge holes and gaps in tactics and kind of like methodology through a game like can't exist, and the need for this rush of vertical linear movement, I feel like that's burdened every Manchester United manager post a Sir Alex Ferguson meal. We seem to kind of like really have to harness this past glory. And I really don't feel like that's kind of where like they're going to be, where Ineos are going to be. I don't think Ineos are going to be there demanding that the next manager that comes in plays like Fergie or has to play with flying wingers. I don't think, and I feel like we're going to move away from that. We're going to move to real, just solid decision making across the board. And I feel like the manager is going to be able to play a modern, beautiful way that is more prone to kind of Barcelona, to Man City. I hate to say it, but the way Arsenal play, like these teams, that's the successful teams. They play the most beautiful football. It's just, that's how it is. And I feel like Ten Hag's time is up. These noises are too loud. They're not just loud in England, they're loud in Holland. And then the Netherlands. You know when they're loud in the Netherlands, it's heavy times. So yeah, that's my opinion on Ten Hag. Just that one element of kind of, it all makes sense for Ten Hag to leave and for De Zerbi to come in and for Ten Hag to go back to Ajax. Makes complete sense. And then just the other point is obviously the whole, we're willing to sell everyone apart from Garnacho, Kobe, and Rasmus, right? You can't sell Rasmus because realistically, like, no one will want to buy him. You've just bought him, 70 mil. He's young as hell. It just doesn't make sense. Not because he's some starlet, because he's absolutely gash, but in terms of from an asset perspective, it makes no sense, right? I understand Garnacho's kind of place in the squad and the team, and maybe this season the actual first team, and understand his kind of social media presence, he's also his value, his age. So, and then Kobe's obviously just like a wonderful player, or will become a wonderful player, right? So those three I get, and it's amazing that the rest have been kind of like tarnished with the same brush, and they're like, any of them can go, right? And it kind of makes sense. Any of them can really go if you think about it. You can put them into, there's categories that we can put them into, but I feel like there's the high wage bracket players that if they were just on less money would still just be like a massive valuable asset, right? And there's quite a lot of those players like Anthony, Casemiro and Varane are obviously the two that spring to mind. So you've got players that if they don't reduce their wage packet, they can go, and they just probably should go in regards to that element if we're trying to do this properly. And then you've got the players that are just like, you've got players that affect the playing style too much and make it too ugly and make it too vertical. So if you want to move away from that, you're going to have to get rid of the players like your Ashfords and your Brunos and your McTominays, realistically your Haalands and your Garnachos. So then you've got that section of players. And then you've got the ones coming to the end of the contracts, not here, Greenwood, Sancho's, Martial's, etc., etc. But just on the top, so basically you can there's different reasons to get rid of different players, and there's different reasons to keep players to like raise their value. I feel like Anthony, for example, Anthony under De Zerbi in a more Brighton style game where we're more compact, where his players are closer to him, where 5-10 yard balls are something that are an option or available to him, then I feel like if you don't want to keep him, that's fine, but his value, like that's a £50 million player at the end of next season if it's in a style that is a De Zerbi kind of esque style where there's information load and it's hold on to possession but also can be incisive. And Anthony ticks those boxes, he really does. And I feel like, so you got players like that, even like players like Sancho, man, I feel like Sancho gets another look in. So you've got these decisions to be made, right? But I feel like the most interesting part of the whole get rid of everyone thing is most of the time, and this is the thing I'll just leave it with, most of the time when you are getting rid of players and keeping players, etc., you keep a nucleus, right? You keep the nucleus and then you kind of add in around or that's the most preferable scenario for a team to be in. Have a strong spine, a strong nucleus, right? And then you're just trying to add in around that. Whereas I think that for us as a team and the way we play and the player profile we have, for Manchester United to really want to change the style of how they play, it doesn't really, like, regardless of the manager and etc., you have to get rid of the players that are making us play this kind of very high-speed, frantic, emotional, up and down football. So you get rid of Bruno Fernandes and Rashford. I know everyone's like, oh my God, not you as well. But just hear me out. Like, you're a grown man. Listen calmly without stressing, right? The positives of getting rid of Bruno and Rashford, not only as our two biggest assets financially, is that it changes the style of play, right? So you don't actually have someone that's just looking to get it forward constantly, like every time he gets the ball, right? So like taking Bruno out of the team, I know a lot of people think the team would just evaporate into nothingness and then we'd end up in the Ryman League next week if Bruno didn't play. But what would actually happen once everyone just like calmed down a little bit? There would be positives. So that there's negatives, of course, but what are the positives? The positive would be that we would be more methodical in our approach in build-up, and we would have someone that would want to actually play in the number 10, a traditional number 10 that stays in that area and wants to take the ball under pressure. So the style would just instantly change with just having Ahmad in the 10 instead of him, right? So if you literally, so that's what I mean by you want to get rid of the players that are going to help change the style of play. And sometimes you need to remove things to change the style. Like there's certain players, it doesn't matter what manager comes in, they revert to just playing the same way. Like Rashford plays the same. He can't play a different way. He has this one way of doing it. And if it's not working, it looks horrific, which is like 80% of the time. And when it works, he looks pretty good 10, 15% of the time, right? So he just can't change. Like Bruno Fernandes will not change. Like I know for Portugal, it's a different kettle of fish for Portugal. But he still has this element of being a bit headless. Nowhere near as gung-ho as he does for Man United. But anyway, style needs to change. Style gets changed when you get rid of McTominay, Bruno, Rashford. Like, that's the style change right there. Get rid of them. Get good money for them. So that's where I feel that the selling side should be at. I feel like we need to look at this with a lens of, with De Zerbi in, because I just think it's so obvious it's going to happen. With De Zerbi in, this is the player profiles that are preferable completely change. Completely. Does Bruno work in Brighton's team? Who would work better in the number 10, Ahmad or Bruno? Right, it's Ahmad, right? In a well-functioning, like last season's Brighton. Like, who's Trossard more like, Ahmad or Bruno? Do you know what I mean? Like these players that are kind of like they're glued to low centre of gravity, actually bop the ball about. So we have to try and get our heads into the space of forget how we've been evaluating our squads and teams and pride profiles for the past 10 years, because it's been with a very kind of like physical lean on it. After Van Gaal, it just went pragmatism and physicality and either real defensive approach or this insane thing that's going on now, which I just don't really understand, but apparently to advanced states what's going on at the moment. So yeah, and I'll end all these videos now towards the end of the season where like firstly, you need some other hobbies apart from watching football if you're getting all hyped up about what's going on at the moment. Like, get yourself some other hobbies, like do some other shit, and then this will just not be so important to you. Like try and be able to actually objectively evaluate football, and the only way to do that is to just like take your emotion out of it, man. And as a Man United fan now, like your anger is wasted. Like, we've done the anger thing, like we've done that for 10 years. So where we're at now is the changes that everybody wanted. The changes where whenever Man United play bad, especially in like the past 5 years, it was like it all stems from the top. Right, the top has changed. It couldn't have changed much better. These over the Qataris all day, because there's actual expertise on performance that's been just come in like that. So we don't know what the Qataris would have done. But this seems like this is the way better approach. Things are good as a United fan. Things are like finally good decisions are being made. The right noises are coming out, and like this is only going to continue. Like it might not succeed in this linear fashion, but most things don't succeed in a linear fashion. But what we do know is that every decision now is being made with that mentality of elite level performance, which again, elite level performance doesn't care about being fair and doesn't care that you like to give managers 4 years. Elite level performance doesn't give a shit about all those things. It only cares about progressing things forward and making like really sensible, objective decisions and completely get rid of emotion. Look at Sir Dave Brailsford. Does that man look like he has an ounce of emotion inside him? Not even an ounce, mate. Cold-hearted. All about performance. Like literally why he's got Sir in front of his name, and you think he's going to be obliged to care about the morality, the moral conundrum of getting rid of a manager with 1 year left because we don't do that, or like well, that's what we've done the past 4 years and look where it's got us. They don't give a shit. Yeah, how in this one perspective they don't give a shit how all the other managers have gone. It has zero relevance. It has no relevance at all to how they're going to make their decision about Ten Hag. It's like flipping a coin, right, 100 times, and you've seen it land on heads like 70 times, and you're like, bro, pick heads, man. This time it's heads. And you're like, mate, all those past results, they are irrelevant. This is a new flip every time, brother. And this is where we're at. Ineos are in. It's a new flip.